I think you people are going to find this extremely incredible, and this will just further prove my prophetic knowledge. But what this is also going to show is the sad world that we live in, of why, just like in the times of Jesus, Jesus himself, what it teaches in Matthew, that he had to speak in parables, and he did this so that only certain ones would understand, that only his sheep, only his children would be able to discern what he was saying. So we are living in similar times to those times, that I have to give my prophecies in such a manner that the false Trump prophets and all these false prophets running around in these days cannot use them, because if they understood it fully the way I understand, and the way I understand how things are happening and coming, what is coming, they would be able to actually fool many people into believing that they are true prophets. Now, the important thing to understand here, we know the most recent event that has occurred in New York. This was the New York City subway massacre that had occurred in New York. And as I've shown about the waters, in understanding the waters, you have to consider what Revelation 17, verse 15 states, that the waters are not literal waters, they are the peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues. So as we see this surge in violence that you hear everybody speaking of, there is a surge as it relates to the waters and waters. There is a surge in violence occurring, and part of that can be seen in this latest, most recent massacre that occurred in the New York subway. But let's listen to what was just aired on Fox News today, and this is one of New York's major officials giving a speech. Realize we're talking about the waters, and let's listen to if we can discern what the waters actually are that are spoken of in Scripture.
Please flood the system, do stop and frisk, and return some civility to
the police. Flood the system. Let's listen to that again.
Police flood the system.
Police flood the system.
Police flood the system.
Do you understand as it relates to the waters? It is in the peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues. This is the same manner that Jesus had to teach. Why he had to teach in parables. He had to teach in parables so that only those that are God, chosen by God, God's children, and God's sheep would understand. And see, when I was doing this video, April the 4th, just days ago, where I was discussing about a flood, how I was showing also that Timothy Dixon and Perry Stone were talking about literal waters, how literal waters were going to flood the east and west coast, and that was a thumbnail, one of Timothy Dixon's thumbnails, how Washington, D.C. would be underwater. But I want you to pay more attention to this about the flood in April the 4th. Discernment of a true prophet, and what I was trying to explain even April the 4th. And the reason I have to do this, and I'm going to show you and prove this to you, because not only was I discussing the flood, I was discussing the reset. So let me show you, that was April the 4th. I have to even trick Timothy Dixon and all the false prophets, because on April the 10th, what did he do? The reset video. He had to do himself a reset video. But see, that's why I put things in the manner, because they're catching on. They do catch on. Timothy Dixon, he may be uneducated, but he is not a fool, because he is using the spirit of Satan. April the 4th. The flood and the reset. I have to do things in a manner because they all follow me. They will all follow me. But here's what's incredible, and this is what I want you to understand, because this is what I was teaching in this other video. The waters are not literal waters. They are what the scripture talks about. They are the peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues, which means the language that is being used by the peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues. So when you hear about a surge in violence, and then you hear them say,
Please flood the system.
flooding the system, see as it relates to the waters. The true waters, not literal waters, the waters that was shown to John by Jesus in the book of Revelation. How the waters are the peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues found in Revelation 17, verse 15. But the reason I'm pointing this out, and the reason I did this video April the 4th about the flood, how it relates to the waters, is because we are going into Easter. We have gone into Easter. And what many people don't realize, Easter, in its first term, understanding in language, in its first tongue, is known as Easter tide. Easter tide, Tide, and see how that relates to waters, the language. You know, in Easter tide, when you have the tides that move in and also tides that move out. When people discuss Easter and Easter time, they don't realize that it goes further back to what's known as Easter tide, how it relates to the waters. It is the period of 50 days spanning from Easter Sunday to Pentecost Sunday. It is celebrated as a single joyful feast called the Great Lord's Day. Each Sunday of the season is treated as a Sunday of Easter. Y'all be sure to understand that so that you can understand the waters and what the waters actually are. God bless.